Gentlemen. Okay. Yeah.
I am here. How you doing?
I might restart this as an open race. Because there's still a good chunk of time until the race itself begins.
Not a bad idea. Probably grab a couple more people.
Alright, I'm gonna go check with you.
Well, it looks like at some point I got disconnected and then it turned to nighttime, so this will be interesting, to say the least.
I think it may have broken when Buggy opened the server just recently.
Oh, did he open it to let a couple more people in?
Yes, and it seems to have worked.
Well, it'll be an interesting one. It is now nighttime, so that's a twist for these guys for sure. Just looking at the weather. Air temp is 17, track temp of 22 right now, 23. Wind out of the northwest, 6 or 9 kilometers an hour. Shouldn't help too much. Going to be a headwind coming through this part of the track here. But it should be a good race. It looked like a lot of people put in a lot of good time in practice. It is a full hour tonight with no second race, no reverse grid, and a bit longer than these guys are used to. The longest race we typically run is 45 minutes, so we'll see how this tracks. Looks like we see a time of 2:20.3, which is the highest time on qualifying right now. But Seb immediately puts up a 2:19. We should see some of these times trickle down a little bit. Can expect maybe some 2:16s, maybe 2:17s during qualifying here, maybe even during the race. But 2:20 is definitely a respectable time. That's only a couple seconds off of the Aliens lap time at Spa. So, I know Buggy typically likes to run the drone camera. However, I've had more luck recently with the track camera, just following the action this way. So I'm hoping we get a few more people who jump in here. For
Drone cam does get finicky at times. Deadly Daniel seems to have accepted the challenge.
season race here. It looks like I actually jumped in the BMW instead of the broadcast van, but that should be fine. I'm not sure how many car slots there is for each, but it looks like it is opened up just due to low attendance, I would assume. So it'll give some more people a chance to attend on the track here. Hopefully there isn't too many randoms that join, considering it is the season finale here. Don't need disruption during the race. Hopefully it's locked down so they can only join up until the race start and not during the race here.
A preferred setting if possible. Some international people have appeared to have joined, so welcome them to the TR race. Kiyagowski has also accepted the call. I wonder if quali times have carried over.
It doesn't look like it, so everybody had to go through and set a new lap time. There's only 8 times on track, with one of them being FA's 5-minute and 19-second lap time that I can see on the live time report here. So we'll see what kind of lap times people can put together. It looks like we got a speed bump with the 217.5, Seb in the 218s, 219 with Buggy, 220 with Lando, 221 with Pax, and it looks like Big Dean Energy has a best time of 220. However, I'm not sure if that one logged or not. It does not appear so. So we'll keep an eye on this one. We'll see what exactly goes on here. I will check to see if I have any messages on things that I need to look out for. But we do have a 60-minute race at Spa for you guys tonight to round out Season 8 of Real Rookie Racing. With some special guests like Kiyagowski. Looks like a race will be during the normal daytime. And it looks like the sun's actually coming up towards the end of qualifying here. So
A daytime race would probably be nice for some of the people that have just joined.
yeah, and Spa, while they do a 24-hour race here, it's really not the best lit track. So we'll see. During the night cycles at Spa, most of Sector 2 and half of Sector 3 are almost completely dark, and you're relying on your headlights. So if people don't have their lights bound and it is a night cycle, they tend to have some complexities in visibility. Especially some of the people who are not running weather effects, where they do not have a night cycle active, they may not have their headlights turned on, which is a big downside for those who are running nighttime and can't see the people on the track.
I have seen that before. Luckily, there is a setting which you can enable to force everybody to have headlights on.
Yep. Yeah, there's a server-side setting too, but I don't believe we have that one enforced, just because night races aren't something we were frequently doing, but it is something we will likely need to introduce at a later point if we continue to explore these night races.
I think they add a nice bit of variety to some of the weeklies.
Yep. Yeah, we're up to 10 drivers on the grid here. Paces are pretty spread out, so hopefully we will have some decent battles on the track. I know a lot of these guys didn't get a whole lot of practice in, But Spa is a very common track. So it shouldn't catch too many of these people off guard too far. I just realized we were watching Seb this whole time. I thought I had auto cam on, but it was just the trackside camera. So we've got quite a few people on track. It will be a standing start in these things, so we'll see what type of reaction these guys have. With only 10 on the grid, it will be easy to cycle through the drivers, so I won't have to cycle through the rotating list at the bottom here. So looks like the timing board is pretty set where it's at. The top 5 all within a couple seconds of each other. It looks like Seb and Buggy may be up for a battle here, unless they can find a little bit more pace to fight with Botlando, or Botlando finds a little bit more pace to bring it to speed bump.
Let's see if Big Dean recaptures any, as Big Dean is out there right now.
Yeah, and Dean did have
Running
a
sectors.
220.
He had a
220 is his best time here, so yeah, that brings him back down into the 220. So hopefully everybody will have somebody to fight with, or maybe some of the front runners will have a few moments and bring the battle a little closer together here. A yellow flag pop up here between Hacks and Seb, coming through Eau Rouge onto the Camel Straight. But it looks like nothing too major here. We are in overtime, so this should flip over to the race session shortly here. We got Daniel coming up the back straight here. Was up for an improvement, but looks to be losing a little bit of time. And teleports to the pits here. Yagi's up a little bit. Dean's up a little bit. So these guys definitely do have some more pace. They just didn't manage to tie it together in the qualifying session here, as Seb unfortunately sends it into the wall.
Big Dean indeed. He had a slightly better time in the quali, the first go around. Otherwise, the field does seem to be shaping up the same as where everybody left it. Could certainly expect Hiagowski and Deadly Daniel to gain time over these qualifying times.
Yep, we are almost 3 minutes into overtime here. Yep, and there it goes. That is the end of the qualifying session. And we will move on to the race here. Hopefully these guys get a little bit closer together in their times by the time the race comes together. Otherwise, we may be in for a pretty boring race as the grid spreads out over such a long circuit here. Typically on a track like this, we want a little bit higher driver turnout. So we'll see what comes to play. I know the EU race today, they ran 20 some odd laps, so we'll see if the same comes from our North America race here.
Indeed, and I believe it required 2 or 3 pit stops to complete.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the fuel...
At least 2.
Looks like fuel rate is set to 300%. So it's likely a 2-stop for these guys today, yeah.
Anyone on soft tires might be considering a 3-stop, especially some of the Porsche drivers on the grid.
Yep, so we've got speed bump at the front of the grid, Botlando in P2, Seb Bellew P3, Buggy in P4, Kiagalski in P5, Big Dean Energy P6, Hacks 7, Deadly Daniel in P8. I'm gonna guess Mushies in P9, FA in P10, and Dankist in P11. So
that is an interesting join for Dankist to jump in. I I don't recall if I had seen him in GT3s before, but he's a very quick racer. So unsure how much he's done this track car combo, but you can trust him to move up and adapt pretty quickly.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on it. Looks like he's actually starting in the P12 grid position. He didn't set a time in qualifying. So it is assuming that the broadcast car is in P11 for the moment. But our lights are about to go up. And we have 60 minutes at Spa tonight. Like Speedbump gets a good launch
just
off
dropped.
the line. See if anybody makes some crazy moves into T1. We've got contact already with Kiegowski and Seb, and Big Dean Energy gets spun around towards the back of the pack there. As people continue to move forward, we'll jump up here. Botlando looking to make a move on Buggy, and Kiegowski directly behind as Botlando heads wide through Eau Rouge. But no overtaking, so it should be okay. This pack is pretty clean together here. We'll cycle through the cameras here a little bit, see if we can get something a little bit closer to the action instead of these far view cameras. We got Kiegowski taking a move around the inside on Botlando, but not quite able to make it stick. Might have to go with the drone camera for this one, just because as Kiegowski goes around the outside of Botlando through Bruxelles and makes it stick this time around. Botlando continues into attempts to make the move here. Seb Bellew making a move around Efe, who goes wide, and Dankist sneaks through as well. We got Mushies making his way through as well here, but Deadly Daniel looking to make his way up to catch up to these guys at the front of the pack. Unfortunately, Hacks appears to have had a moment further back and needs to work his way up the field. We've got Big Dean Energy clawing his way back. We know he had some pace. We saw it earlier on. We've got a pretty tight grouping up here, so we'll keep an eye on these guys as this gap moves down. We'll pull up the hood cam on Botlando here as he approaches Kiegowski heading down towards the bus stop. We'll jump up as he approaches that corner and see if anybody manages to make a move through the bus stop. Nothing so far. Everybody keeping it clean through here. We had that little incident in T1. Speedbump sets the fastest lap as the first one across the line, so nothing too major here. So we'll jump back with our drone. Feeding energy towards the back. The pack does seem to be separating out a little bit. We've still got Mushies on the back of Dankist. Dankist attacking towards Seb Bellew, has fallen back about a second so far. It is on the very edge of the toe of these GT3 cars. We'll keep an eye on that gap to jump up towards Botlando, who's looking to make an attack on Kiegowski going through the Camel Straight. See if you can make the most of that toe, but it looks like he may be running a little bit more downforce than Kiegowski in that Z4, with a little bit more straight line speed coming from that BMW.
Big Daniel, I believe, just got passed by Big Dean Energy.
Yep, and Big Dean Energy made his way past Efe.
Spins out.
Deadly Daniel on the attack against Big Dean Energy, maybe following him around. They're both in those mid-engine cars, so we'll see if maybe he can learn something following Dean's line here as Dean looks to make his way back up the field. Kiegowski making an attack on Buggy. It looks like Buggy had a bit of a moment there. Botlando coming through as well, closing that gap down into Fagnus. Luckily for Buggy, there was a pretty heavy braking zone. That gap was closing down pretty quick there. as he looks to find the pace, but it looks like he had a little bit of the spin. His tires may be a little cooked at the moment. Botlando looking to make the most of it with a strong exit down the back straight towards the bus stop. We'll see if he can stick it around the outside of Blanchemont here. But it looks like he is having the same type of an issue that he had on the Kemmel Straight, not having quite enough straight line speed. And Buggy manages to start pulling away into the bus stop chicane, and those BMWs are so good on the brakes. It doesn't give Botlando too much of a chance to attack into that braking zone. We'll jump back here as we see Mushies coming through around the inside of Dankus, going side by side down the main straight, start across the start-finish line. And down into T1, we'll see if he is brave, but it looks like Dankus is later on the brakes here and manages to hold that position cleanly. We'll follow them through Eau Rouge and then jump around the track here. We see the grid starting to spread out a little bit, but Buggy fell behind Botlando
Buggy's
again.
riding Botlando.
With a
Might have
little bit of a gap.
toe.
We'll jump up here. We'll be able to see how good that BMW is on that brakes compared to the Porsche, where you have to balance the car a little bit more. But the Porsche has a little bit more rotation available. You can see the same thing towards the back. We've got Mushies in that BMW and Dankus in that McLaren, it looks like. But the strengths of these cars are just a little bit different. The McLaren is the all-around fastest in the right hands. But it is a little bit more difficult to master than some of these other cars. It looks like our grid is starting to spread out a little bit here. We've got Botlando within a second of Buggy, and that is the closest battle other than Mushy's attack on Dankus just behind them. Looks like we did have FA disconnect, retire the car already during this race session. And it looks like Mushies has also teleported to the pit. You got Daniel.
Daniel had a off-track incident and passed by Hacks.
Yeah, it looks like Daniel's within about a second here of Hacks, so we will keep an eye on that. But overall, the closest chase right now is Botlando attacking towards Buggy, but looks like that BMW has quite a bit more straight line with the setup tuning, as well as just being so good on the brakes. We got Seb Bellew right behind Botlando as well, in that Z4, which does have a ton of straight line speed, but tends to not have the braking ability like that BMW does.
Well, note that Kwiatkowski has been gaining about 1/10 of a second per lap on speed bump.
Yeah, it looks like he had a purple sector 2 and 3 last lap, so hopefully Kwiatkowski can bring it down to speed bump towards the end of the race here. Buggy with a major moment out of Eau Rouge onto the Kemmel Straight. Looks to get his car moving again before anyone catches
Extremely
up.
warm tires. Big Dean Energy may have the speed to catch up before the turn.
Not quite, but that Ferrari is super nimble through the corners, so it may be able to catch up to the BMW around some of these mid to high speed corners.
And we have to appreciate having a nice bright red Ferrari on in the race.
Yeah, I think there's supposed to be a livery on here, but it does not look to have properly assigned, at least on my client side.
For Ferrari, it works.
Yeah, though the liveries may not be assigned due to opening up this race as well. So. Looks like our grid is spread out quite a bit. Our closest battle right now is Botlando chasing down Kwiatkowski. It looks like Kwiatkowski must have had a moment in Sector 2. We can see he is 4 seconds down on his last lap in Sector 2, so he must have went a little wide somewhere. We got Big Dean Energy within a second of Buggy still chasing that down, so we'll jump his dash cam in our standings board here. We are 9 minutes into this. We got 50 minutes to go. We'll see if any pit strategies or anything along those lines plays a factor in here. I am expecting a 2-stop race. We got speed bump with the fastest lap so far of a 2:18.8, immediately followed by Kiyogolski with a 2:18.2, despite having that extremely slow sector 2. Looks like that may have been a delay because Kiyogolski's last lap was a 2:23. And the previous lap was a 2:18. So
Interesting. Yes, that popped up at the wrong time.
looks like Dean did manage to make it past Buggy while I was looking at the timings board there. See if Buggy can manage to chase him down. Keep an eye on the timing of Lando there on Kiyogolski. Through this sector of the track that they're on now is where he may be able to make up some time on that BMW. But we can see the late braking from Buggy around the inside makes it clean, but a little bit too much curb sends him into the grass. He has to slow down so he doesn't lose the car there. Following Big Dean Energy deep with the late braking move as they go down into Bruxelles. We'll see the difference in the car's characteristics through the turns coming up here. The names at the top of the screen are throwing me off because they are not the current names for the corners anymore. As Buggy closes deep every braking zone just with the power of that BMW, carrying so much speed late into the corner. So we got Buggy closing in on the bus stop chicane here, taking it deep around the outside, looking for the switchback, but unfortunately Dean slows down enough into the corner that Buggy can't get his turn in quite how he wants it. See if he can find another move into T1, but it looks like he has been losing it through Eau Rouge a little bit, at least on the one of the previous laps. See a little bit of a different line coming through T1. As they look to go through Eau Rouge, could take a little bit more curb going through that second part of Eau Rouge onto the Camel Straight, but carrying so much more speed than Ferrari coming through here with that toe. The top speed of this BMW is just massive compared to this Ferrari. Looking at the timings board, Buggy's getting up to 275 versus Dean's 267 through the Camel Straight here. Through Lacombe, he makes it stick. We're going to go down into Bruxelles, see if Dean can manage to close up the gap at all. Unfortunately for him, that BMW seems to be the strongest contender currently coming through at these corners. We'll come through Bruxelles up into Puan, and we'll see how that gap fares. It looks like Buggy may manage to run away with a little bit as Dean goes a little wide into the first part of Puan. And Buggy late on the brakes into Fagnus down into campus before taking that speed into Blanchimont again here. Seb only a second behind Lando currently. We'll see if he can manage to close up any of this gap. That Porsche is so nimble. Speed bump setting a 2:18.0 as the current fastest lap. and Kwiatkowski coming across the line with a 2:18.8. So it looks like that gap is starting to spread out a little bit more. We saw it down to just a few seconds, but it is all the way up to 8 seconds here now. And we will let this one play out. I'm actually going to turn off the drone and set up the auto cam currently, as the field is starting to spread out a little bit here. Looks like Buggy's had a few moments, down 18 seconds now from Dankist in P5. And Daniel's fallen back a little bit more as well here. So not the greatest turnout of the race tonight. However, overall it's been a really good GT3 season. Good turnout up until this final event. I'm not sure why the turnout is so low. The only explanation I can personally think of is that maybe people are getting a little burnt out on Spa. It is one of the most popular tracks, one of the most common tracks racing online.
A fair criticism, I think, is I believe they're allowed to drop one race from their final standings.
Yep, there is one race drop, but we do have bonus attendance points this season. I'm not sure if the bonus for attending all races is big enough to
Alter anybody's
alter
in their
anybody's
group.
opinion on whether or not they want to skip a race, though.
So far, 7th lap just started. Speed bump with almost a 2:18 even that everybody else is trying to catch up to. Kwiatkowski a quarter second behind that.
Yeah, it looks like the last lap from Kwiatkowski was a 2:19.6, so Speedon is putting up consistent 2:18s. Meanwhile, everybody else on the grid appears to be struggling a little bit. Botlando has been very consistent with his times, as we see Big Bean Energy unfortunately have a bit of a moment at the back there, coming through the bus stop chicane. Some of these cars really seem to be at a disadvantage on the straights, just based off of the top speeds I'm seeing. My assumption it is just running a little bit more aero on this track to get some benefit through some of the lower mid-speed corners. Unfortunately, they're just losing so much time on those straights with that decision being made. So, you got any big plans going into this weekend as the grid spreads out?
I get to see my parents briefly and have them play with the kids for a little while tomorrow before I drive them to an airport as they go on a trip overseas. Maybe I can try to convince my dad to jump onto the sim rig and do some driving before he leaves.
Yeah, that should be fun. I had my mom and her husband jump into the rig when I first got it set up, and they had an absolute blast. I think I couldn't get them out of there for like 2 hours. So they had a lot of fun with the rig when I set it up. But her husband's a retired master Dodge technician, so he's just always been in love with cars. I'm gonna try to wake
great.
up.
I mean, you can imagine the last time anybody's experienced that was maybe in an arcade machine from the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna try and wake up myself early tomorrow and do the 3-hour Le Mans race on iRacing. but no guarantees on that one.
Speed
Pretty-
Bump had entered the pits. Buggy is. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, nope, nobody else yet. But coming up on 20 minutes is about the time that some of these cars are dropping out of fuel at the moment.
Yeah, they are running a 300% fuel rate, and you figure they can probably run an hour, maybe a little bit more with standard fuel burn. So they've got to be pushing pretty close, but with the lower pace on the cars, they're probably using a little less fuel than say Speed Bump is with his consistent 218s. But we'll see what happens. It looks like Speed Bump's stop was fast enough that he may not have replaced tires, so maybe he's going one stop just fuel and tires during the second stop. However, the tires are set to 100%, so there is a possibility some of these guys may run the same set of tires the entire race, especially the cars like the Porsche and the BMW that are just really easy on their tires. So they may be able to just double fuel without having to worry about the tires at all.
Dank is very consistently setting his best last laps. So almost constant improvement from him.
Yeah, it looks
Big
like
Dean and Hacks. Daniel also getting his time down 2 seconds below his start times.
Yeah, it looks like the best lap times for a lot of these guys have dropped down into those 218s, 219s, so they are finding the pace. It's going to be all about consistency to keep these spots. The gaps are still small enough that they may be decided entirely on consistency going forward into this race. I can't click on anybody's name. There we go. Speed Bump makes its way through the bus stop to take that spot back from Kwiatkowski. We'll see what the gap is as Kiage comes out of the pits on the other side of T1. Looks like he is moving. I believe the gap was about 8 seconds when he entered the pits. We'll see what it is as he comes out here. Looks like he
Felt like a very long pit stop, about 38 seconds, 37 seconds for Kwiatkowski.
Yeah, that
Unsure.
may be the duration for tires and fuel in these GT3s. The tire changes are significantly quicker in the GT3s than they are in the Miatas.
He has taken the softs again. Be interesting to see if he does another change on softs or if he takes these all the way to the end. Left to pit, but Lando, Dankist, and Seb, as well as Buggy, have not come in yet. Hacks and Deadly Daniel also waiting to pit.
Yep, after this first round of pit stops, we should get a pretty good idea of the current standings of the race. And a pretty good idea of what they'll look like after the finale here. If anybody makes it to 30 minutes without pitting, they may be looking at a 1-stop instead of a 2-stop. So I'll see if anybody's running a little bit more fuel and able to get that 1-stop to work, or if everybody's going to happen to run into that 2-stop. But with 36 minutes left and some of these guys haven't come into the pits yet, it is possible that they are fuel saving enough to stretch their car to a 1-stop on this race. However, we see Dankus coming into the pits. We see Botlando is still out and about in P1 currently. And he did make it in the last race down to about 6 minutes left in the race before he had to come in and pit. Though that was with a slightly lower fuel load. We've got Buggies still out on track as well. They've got to be looking at about 3 laps or a minimum of 2 laps with this, as we see Kwiatkowski make a move on hacks around the bus stop. So it looks like we've still got Botlando, Seb, Buggy. Dankus is now in the pit. And hacks have yet to pit here.
Dankest also presumably a tire change. Coming back out on softs in the McLaren.
So best laps we can see right now, everybody's in those 219s, 218s, somewhere in there. We've got Hacks with the 222, Daniel with the 222, and Dean with the 221. But everybody else seems to be pretty close together on the pace here. We'll see if we can get gaps to show up. There we go, the intervals there. As Daniel comes out of the pits, we've still got 5 drivers on the grid. Nope, Daniel just came out of the pits. We've got 4 drivers on the field that still have not pit, which would be our current P1 and P2 with Botlando and Seb Bellew. And then we've also got Buggy and Hacks who have not yet pit. 34 minutes left to go. It'll be interesting to see if some of these guys can stretch that fuel out to that 30-minute mark, and even if they pit just with a little over 30 minutes left, see if I can get at least one more lap on this tank, and it looks like Botlando's going to make it stretch.
Botlando and Seb, to be said, have both posted slower lap times, so I think they have to be feeling those tires a little bit.
Yeah, it looks like Seb is going into the pits here. Botlando out for another lap without pits. It looks like Buggy may be doing the same and avoiding the pits and relying on the fuel saving strategy to move his positions up during the race here. So Seb Bellew has come into the pits. Hacks has come into the pits. Those are 2 of the final 4 that still need their pit stops. So the only 2 remaining drivers that have yet to pit would be Botlando and Buggy. Putting up, looks like Botlando put up a 224 last lap. I'm not sure if it is a mistake or just due to a massive amount of fuel saving on that lap. Buggy's still putting up 220s, which is a reliable time, especially if he's planning on a 1-stop section with those 220s. With 32 minutes left, it'll be a gamble to see whether or not a 1-stop's going to do it for him. Or even worse, if they happen to run out of fuel.
I'm starting to get a little worried as that's a distinct possibility.
We'll toggle the auto cam off and get an eye on Botlando. He's only down a half a second on his best, coming through Blanchardmont into the bus stop.
He must have the fuel.
Yeah, we'll see if he has another lap in him, or if he's planning on coming in this lap. If he can manage to go one more as he peels into the pits here, he's gonna have to heavy fuel save for the second stint if he's planning on trying to salvage that 1-stop. We've got Buggy down a second and a half on his best. If he's targeting those 220 lap times, that would be a feasible 1-stop as Buggy pulls into the pits as well here. We are running at 300% fuel rate, so you will see coming through the bus stop chicane. Looking for his next move. He'll pass with both Botlando and Buggy in the pits here. He pulls forward into as Buggy pulls forward into his pit box, and speed bump
Dean
runs away
and
onto
Dankest
the
also
channel.
with a very fast collision. Not Not sure what happened to him there. He's down 6 seconds.
Looks like Dean has retired from the race, unfortunately. We're back down to 8 drivers for the remainder of this race. Everyone's spread out quite a bit here. We'll see if anybody manages to close any gaps, make any moves. I'll be interested to see if Botlando and Buggy end up fuel saving their way back to the front, but it looks like Botlando did manage to make a move on Kwiatkowski. Kwiatkowski must have had a little bit of a moment come through Bruxelles here, as the gap from Botlando to Kwiatkowski has already expanded to 6 seconds. Looks like he may be struggling with the tires here pretty significantly. And Seb Bellew makes his way through as Kwiatkowski takes the wide line off the track to make sure he doesn't get in the way of anybody there. Dankist is closing in on Kwiatkowski as well here, coming down into campus. See if that McLaren can make a move on the BMW coming up into Bredelian.
This may be a close fight. These guys both have extremely similar pace.
Yeah, it's just the different strengths of these cars, more than anything at the moment. Keep an eye on this here. And drops Mikey Golden. So we will jump back onto the drone camera, the far chase here, and see if we can manage to catch a move from Dankist on Kwiatkowski coming through one of these corners. But that BMW seems to have so much more top speed than some of these other cars. So Kwiatkowski's setup is topping out about 271 and Dankist at about 269, so that top speed difference really isn't as big for these two. If he can stay within that draft range, which he is right on the edge of with that 0.8 gap here, but he is not tucked quite into the draft directly behind Kwiatkowski. See if Kiage can manage to keep it together, but it looks like he has another moment, loses it a little bit coming wide through the calm, and he disconnects from the server with 7 drivers remaining here.
That's unfortunate. He was very steady for most of the entire race. Extremely quick, but
Yeah, I'm wondering if he may not have changed his tires and those softs just wore down on him a little bit more than he was anticipating. We're down to 7. Deadly Daniel currently in the pits. We'll see if he rejoins the track here. There is 26 minutes remaining, so he may be looking at making his final stop. However, he is a lap down on speed bump at this point in the race. As Seb appears to run a little bit wide, I saw the yellow flag flash up around his driver icon there. And Dankist has been falling back slowly. Looking at the lap time, the last lap for Buggy here was a 2:58. I'm not sure if that was an outlap or perhaps he had a bit of a moment. We'll jump back with Buggy. We'll see he's still putting up those roughly 2:20s. So that must have been his outlap. And we'll see if he manages to stretch the fuel here on his car down into a one-stop, a little bit short shifting, running a higher gear through here. May be enough for him to fuel save that extra lap of fuel over the course of the remaining time. So we'll jump back into the auto cam here and let this follow the action for us. The cars are spread out quite a bit, so not a ton of action going on here. We'll see if any big moments or any gaps close up here, but we got Seb Bellew, the closest gap right now, just under 2 seconds behind Dankist in P3.
Dankist again setting extremely consistent laps at 219s, 220s at worst.
Yeah, really, I think the only potential that somebody may have to taking this race away from Speed Bump is if they manage to fuel save that one stop. Speed Bump came in 20 minutes into the race, so his hopes of trying for a one stop are near impossible with how early he came into the pits. As Speed Bump continues to just put up those consistent 218s in his R8, pulling his way away from the rest of the field here. Deadly Daniel just hanging out for the experience. Essentially for these guys right now, it's almost like an hour of time trial, hoping for cars ahead to make a mistake. As Botlando is pushing on, currently up 3/10 on his best. See if he can manage to continue on with that. I'm wondering if with that time delta we're seeing that he's given up on that strategy of fuel saving for the duration of the race. Meanwhile, Buggy's last lap was a 2:23, so he may be hanging, or a 2:22. He may be hanging on to the hope of fuel saving through here. As Speedball continues to push, attempting to push his best lap. Based on his first lap, I would expect him to come into the pits at the end of this next one. And that we'll see where he pops out in relation to Buggy, who appears to be the only one potentially on that one stop, except for maybe Botlando. Still have a variation of cars here. We've got an Audi, Porsche, McLaren, Nissan, BMW, a second Audi, a second McLaren on the grid here. So there is a fair variety of cars on the track currently, with 5 out of the 8 choices still participating in the race session here.
Orlando now with a personal best at
Botlando with that 2:19.125. Speedwell still pushing and putting up those low 2:18s the majority of his laps. consistently in that Audi, which is not a very forgiving car if you are to make a mistake. As we see Deadly Daniel jump out of the way for the cars coming through. Doesn't want to disrupt anybody else's potential chase for a position here. So at the end of this lap, based on when speed bump hit in the first lap, I would expect to see him come into the pits, unless he overfueled for an extra lap or two, in which case he will be able to come in a little later, but looked like after his first pit stop, he was planning on 2 stopping in 3 equal stints. Jump up here to speed bump. And it looks like he is going out for another lap. Potentially just because he was setting a personal best with that 2:17.9.
2:17 has been breached. For a moment I thought maybe there'd be enough laps for somebody to catch up, but he does not want to make a mistake. Speed bump being extremely consistent for the entire season on every track.
Yeah, if I think if there was more cars on the track, it may have been a little bit of a different story. But with the unfortunately lower turnout, it is less likely for him to encounter other drivers that may throw him off his line, so he's been able to essentially just hot lap for the duration of the race so far. Got 19 minutes to go. We'll see what kind of laps speed bump manages to put up. We got Buggy with a good exit. He put up a 2:19.5 last lap. So I'm not sure if he thinks he can make it or if he has decided that he can't make it and he's going to need to come into the pits for a splash and dash towards the end here. Both him and Botlando made it down to 31 minutes left before they came in for their first pit stop. So it'll be interesting to see if they do think that they can manage a one stop here or not. I know Patchy in the Porsche a couple seasons ago did manage to stretch out these longer races, the 45-minute races, and come into pit regularly on those last couple minutes, and just stretch out his lap time to or stretch out his fuel to allow him to flash and dash towards the end. And I think he won several races that way. As speed bump comes into the pits with 17 minutes remaining, we come out of the pits with a little bit of time left. We have Deadly Daniel having a spin after campus here. We'll see him on the left side of the road of Seb Value, patiently waiting for the next car to come through before he goes for his rejoin on the track. We'll see Buggy coming through where Daniel just had his spin, using all of the track.
Bump now leaving the pit at a 23-second stop, so that sounds like fuel only. Botlando will be out in front.
Yeah, we'll have to see what kind of a gap gets built to speed bump, and whether or not Botlando thinks he can do this in a single stop or not.
With a spread of only 5.5 seconds, it's gonna be very tough to fuel save and have the pace to stay in first. So
yeah, if we figure the 2:18s from speed bump, Botlando's 2:20 on his last lap. Botlando may be hoping for fuel save into a P2 here, though with everybody else on the grid, it looks like he could hold P2 and go in for a second stop if needed, because Dankus, Seb, Buggy, Hax, and Daniel all have another pit stop to make if they don't think that they can make it on a single stop here. It'll be interesting to see what plays out here. If Balando does go in for fuel and Buggy stays out, it could put Buggy into P2 potentially with fuel saving, even with those 220 lap times. So I'm not sure he is saving quite enough fuel to make that happen at this time, but we'll have to see how it manages to play out towards the end of the session here. 15 minutes to go. We're 45 minutes into this race. We've lost a few drivers along the way. Big shout out to everyone who is still in the race, who has been hanging out for the duration of the race. And a shout out to anybody watching the race, because I know this one can't be the most exciting of the races of the season for you guys. If anybody's watching that hasn't watched any of our events in the past or hasn't participated in our races, would like to participate in our races, usually we have more cars on the grid than this. It was just a unfortunate low turnout race. You can check the link in the description for our Discord, where all of our race information can be found. We run open races Monday through Friday. I believe we are dropping our Thursday time slot into the next season. The time just didn't seem to work for people. However, we still have 4 races a week and an iRacing race on Saturdays every other week as well. Big shout out to Pogo, who has managed to keep me some company tonight. Unfortunately, both Base Cannon and Jawa are away this weekend and were unable to join me. So thanks to Pogo for not making me sound like a crazy person talking to myself for an hour.
Appreciate the opportunity. I usually enjoy watching the Friday night GT3 races, even as I play games with other friends.
Yeah, they're broadcasting this season's been a lot of fun. GT3s are a bit more of a challenge than I usually see myself able to drive, so I was more than happy to broadcast the GT3 races this season. But I must say, watching the races definitely makes me want to participate in the races more than broadcasting. So,
Likewise, keeping a handle on these kinds of cars, they can be quite a lot, especially for between the 40 and 60-minute races that we tend to have with them.
yep. Yeah, we see Speed Bump has closed down that gap to Balando pretty significantly, and the sun is starting to set. We may get the final 10 minutes as the sun sets on this wonderful track in Belgium here, as Balando takes a very aggressive, I'll say, line through Rodillion after Eau Rouge, and cuts off a big chunk of the track there, just grasping to try and keep that spot from Speed Bump, as we can see him in the background there. I'm going to turn off the auto cam and try to find a decent track cam view here as Speed Bump closes this one down. On Balando. You see him go aggressive around the outside of Magnus after closing the gap tight through Puyan. We'll see if he can close that gap up even more through Blanchimont. And that R8 does seem to have quite a bit more top speed than this Porsche with the current configuration in place. The wind has changed. We got a 14-mile-an-hour wind out of the southwest. I believe, or maybe into the southwest. I'm not entirely sure how the wind tracker on this reads.
I was also never quite sure of the orientation. There's the move on the outside, side by side with Lando.
Yeah, as we see them close down into P1, and it looks like Speed Bump may have the line to make this one stick. And he definitely does, but oh no. Lando got the switchback
I believe that was the switchback.
into T1 and holds the spot from Speed Bump. But does Lando have enough fuel to make this one hold out, as Speed Bump just has so much more speed, but both of them take a very aggressive line over the track limit on Rouge and Radillion.
Dankus now in the pits, giving out Buggy pass.
Yeah, that's gonna allow Buggy to pass for sure. We'll see if he has enough fuel to hold this one down, and if Seb has enough fuel to hold this one down. Buggy may be able to fuel save his way into a P3, but Speed Bump has made that pass stick now, and will likely now start to run away from Lando a little bit. Coming through.
Dankus, I believe, tire change on his second pit. Doesn't seem he was going to make them last the entire race. Somebody in a collision. Buggy going off track just a bit.
Yeah, a little bit of a contact with the wall through the comb for Buggy, but he does manage to keep the car moving. The gap between Seb and Buggy at 20 seconds. If Seb goes to pit and Buggy does not, then Buggy will secure that P3. It is starting to get dark out here, as we see cars continue to drift wide. Track cuts did make an impact in the EU race this afternoon. We'll see if they manage to make an impact in this race as well, with the penalties applied post-race. As we see both Speed Bump and Lando with invalid lap times on their previous lap. As Seb Value peels into the pits with 7 minutes remaining, I'll be curious to see if Buggy does manage to hold this one out as he is coming into the bus stop. Let's see if he peels into the pits, but it looks like he's going to keep going. He's down 3.5 seconds. I believe he has been fuel saving pretty regularly over the course of this stint. He's 43 seconds back from Lando, so Lando can pit if needed and still be safe from Buggy, but it would be close coming out of the pits. A little splash and dash could work well for them, though. Bellew comes across the pit line on pit exit, which is not enforced on our Assetto Corsa servers. However, if that happened in one of our iRacing sessions, there would be a crossing penalty for exiting the pits unsafely, crossing that pit line.
Absolutely straight to jail.
100%. That'll be a fine of approximately 3 I don't know, shekels or something. Rubles. Monopoly dollars. We'll go with those. For the bank for crossing the pit line on exit. That value. You heard it here. A 3 Monopoly dollar fine for crossing the pit exit line. As
So naughty.
Hacks keeps it inside the line. There it is, right? We just needed to see somebody else take it clean, so then we can
Very professional.
hold that strong. As Deadly Daniel takes the rallycross line. Unfortunately, we've got some headlights off coming through here from it looks like Dankest with no headlights on. A little spooky. Hopefully Daniel has a crew chief or something running in the background, giving a heads up on these approaching cars. As Buggy is coming through the bus stop one more time, it would be about 2 more laps to go here. That value about 7 seconds behind Buggy. If he has to hold out for, gonna be 3 more laps for Buggy with the positioning of Speed Bump on the track. It'll be iffy on whether or not he has enough fuel to make it through here without having to stop. Same with Botlando, who has only gone in once. It's just those two who have not stopped a second time yet. Be curious if either of them make this one-stop stretch stick.
It's gotta be close. That's gonna put Buggy right in front of Seb.
It's getting pretty dark here. If we can manage to brighten it up a little bit. Let's see. Your config. Light, night sky.
Night sky, ambient nip.
Moonlight.
Oh. Try there's an
Lowest ambient light.
There you go.
Okay. Turn that up a little bit. There we go. See a little bit more here. With those ambient nips. As Botlando does peel into the pits. And not going to be able to make it. He should come out of the pits pretty close to Buggy based on the gaps that they had when he went in. It is just going to be a slash and dash. I'm sure
now.
he's not grabbing tires.
It looks like he will be okay. Buggy still.
Yeah.
2 turns to go, lots of slowdowns. And he's in the pits. Buggy could not manage the fuel save. 2.5 minutes left to go. Seb is going to.
Yeah, he'll be in for that splash and dash. Seb will take that place back. Be curious if he loses the spot to Dankest as well here.
Dankest already on 2 pits and fresh tires.
And coming down into T1, Buggy should leave the pits to in front of him holding that P4 position, but we'll see if Buggy, with his tires cooling down in that pit stop, can manage to keep this position ahead of him with only 4 seconds to go. Dank is setting a 2:18.8 for a best lap. That's only 7/10 better than Buggy's best lap. With only, looks like 2 laps to go here based on Speed Bump's current position on the track. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Axe ends up, unfortunately, in the barrier.
Buggy on old tires, he's gonna have to be careful if he feels like he's under pressure from Dankest. The 3-second gap, all he has to do is stay consistent.
Yep, we'll definitely keep an eye on that one. We'll open Dank's hood view here and see if he managed to close that one down to Buggy. But looks like this may be the finishing order that we see here. As long as everybody stays consistent for the final 2 laps of the race, as Speed Bump takes the final turn and Botlando starts his final lap as well. Deb is coming through. Blanchemont currently we had a full day-night progression during this race. 24 hours condensed into 60 minutes. Yeah, probably like 12 hours. The sun's not
Is that
coming
the sun
back up
about
yet.
to coming up? No. Somehow road temperature hotter in the middle of the night than it was during the day.
Yeah, as Daniel comes into pits. Wonder if he's planning on stopping just before the line so he doesn't have to do one more lap. Doesn't look like it. He will be pitting for fuel and coming out for his final lap of the race as well here as Speed Bump, who has been dominant this entire race, comes through.
He maybe, Daniel, I believe, just took a drive-through. I'm unsure if he had a penalty at the beginning of the race that we didn't notice.
It looks like he stopped for just a splash off on fuel
Yes.
here. As Speed Bump comes through on the final lap of the race and finishes this one out for us. We got Botlando, who will be not the next car coming through, but Pax, who is currently a lap down in the other R8, coming through on his final run down into finishing this race. We got Botlando coming through the bus stop in his final lap and celebrating. We've got our donuts running at the end as usual. Steb Bellew going to be the next car to come across here. See him coming through Blanchemont down into the bus stop and bringing this one home in the Nissan in P3 overall. Deb has had a great performance in the car that a lot of people seem to consider to be one of the worst cars. And we've got Buggy closing in right behind Deb into the final.
Always great, though, to see a GTR represent.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then we
Dankest.
got Dankest coming through in P5. Deadly Daniel coming through into Blanchemont now to round out in P7 for the race here.
Good strong showings from the guys who were not part of the season. Came out to race regardless.
Yeah, big shout out to the guys who joined in late. We've got donuts going on here. Botlando appears to have popped a tire as Daniel crosses the line to finish this one out and goes into the pile up at the end of the race, as is tradition of the real rookie racing seasons here, as we try to move our camera and suddenly completely lose control of our camera. A look at the donuts here as people start teleporting to the pits.
Ooh, finally, Seb got it on one tire. That's a great result.
Big shout out to everybody
Shooting
who
sparks.
showed. Big shout out to Pogo for co-commentating with me tonight. And again, if anybody's interested, we run races 5 nights a week, going down to 4, unfortunately, unless we get some more interest in our open wheel series. And then the link to the Discord's in the description. I am signing off for the night. You all have a wonderful evening.